Right, so Waterford in 2020, just what's their wish list? What do they want? How can they kick on? Because 2019 was a disastrous year. Finished bottom of the Munster Championship. Were not at all impressive. Destroyed in the league final after getting there, kind of against the head under Pádraig Fanning. He's left. Liam Cahill's in. Even 2018, if you jump back then, disastrous final season under Derek McGrath. Of course, there was the mitigating circumstances of the injuries and the suspensions. But they haven't won a championship match since the 2017 All-Ireland semi-final.
Yeah.
Against 14-man Cork, it mustn't be forgotten, and won the quarter-final after extra time. So before that against Kilkenny. Where are Watford at, first of all?
They're at fairly low starting off, aren't they, in fairness. And we kind of talked about Liam Cahill and maybe, dropping Noel Connors and Maurice Shannon. I don't know. I'd say there was probably a sense that he just felt like, in a way, and I hope I'm not reading into it too much, they just felt we need to totally recalibrate here. We need to start from the very start. And he kind of said, he had mentioned about Noel and Maurice. He said they didn't fit into the type of plan he had or the type of play he had, which was going to be a lot of movement, which I thought was interesting.
Just to cut across you for a second now, he did say the type of game I'm going to play in the coming years is going to involve fellas predominantly being able to get around the field. So whether that, and no, he did say the panel is open for any lad who's playing well enough. Maybe does that fall into the category? Because I think everyone would assume, Noel Connors is the best cornerback that they have. Now, is he thinking of moving away from the sweeper, and does that change how he wants his cornerbacks to play? I don't know. Maurice Shanahan wouldn't be the fastest player in the world. He has other qualities. But anyway, look, that's just I cut across you there. But so
no, but I thought that was interesting, and I think he felt the need to go back to the very start, and then on the point of that as well, kind of lay down some certain kind of ground rules, I suppose, as well. And then I'm presuming it happened, but Austin Gleeson kind of was basically saying that we kind of realise now that we're all our heads are on the chopping block now, and we all need to basically get back to basics. His Christmas this year, by all accounts, was a different Christmas. Well, the one he had planned anyway, where he was going to train basically the whole of Christmas and get himself in order. So I think Liam Cahill's probably, I wasn't sure about it, but he seems to have had, the players seem to be buying into it anyway. They seem to be training very, very hard. They know that they're going to have to do things completely different than they've done them before. They can't, not saying they were coursing along or anything like that, but he's going to have to rip up the script almost, and they're going to have to start again.
If Watford don't do something like this year or next year, assuming Cahill has 2 seasons, that will be 3 managers in a row where there's been possibly very heavily underperforming players. So you'll have 2018, as I said, last year for Derek, that wasn't good. 2019, very poor under Pádraig Fanning. And then if it's poor under Liam Cahill, people might stop saying it's the manager, it's the system, it's trying to change the system, it's the new manager again. They'll start saying, well, at what stage do you start looking at the players and say, hey, you're supposed to be an all-star, and why aren't you playing well?
I'd imagine people have started saying that already. I would imagine so.
It never takes long for the knives to come out in GAA.
It's also, if they don't win All-Ireland by the 2021 season, I owe Martin Brettany, my old Irish Independent colleague who retired at the end of last year, €100. I bet him €50 at our Sports Star Awards that Waterford to win All-Ireland within 5 years. He wanted the bet, and then in Singapore, the All-Stars, a year later, I doubled down on it after they getting bet in the All-Ireland
So when was this? That was after 2017?
Yeah, we put the bet on in 16, and then he reminded me a year later at the All-Stars, and I was just pure pig ignorant. I was I'm doubling down on this. And at the moment, what if I wanted to put €100 on, what odds would I be getting now in Watford to an All-Ireland next 2 years? You're talking double figures, realistically. Do you know?
Right, what
prove me wrong, please.
Yeah.
Prove me right, actually. Prove Brenny wrong.
What do Watford need? And you'd be thinking, what did they lack the last couple of years? And it's maybe that threat inside. Because I've often talked about how I think they converted Brick to a forward and they tend to put Gleeson up front. They didn't last year.
Kevin Moran was a forward when I don't think he ever actually was.
Yeah, but these guys are pushed up into the forwards because they lack someone who's both a scoring forward but can also win the ball. So they're kind of having to move the decks around to try and get the best of, get the best sort of balance that they can. Desi Hutchinson, he's going to come in from Ballygunner. Great season with Ballygunner, former Premier League soccer player, as everyone knows, with Brighton. He looks like he's going to be excellent inside. Really nice target man. But they have an awful lot of guys who would be a similar size profile. A fast guy who's jinky, can take a few scores. But do they have a foil for him in there? Who do they have that can be their answer to, and they're rare, a Seamus Callan, a TJ Reid, a Joe Canning, Patrick Horgan? Do they have, can Desi be that?
God,
do they have anyone to
that's-
pair? Do they have anyone to pair with him? Someone who is a goal threat that the other team can't just say, "We'll man mark him with that guy and it'll blot him out." But they need to actually plan their backline around stopping that guy.
They don't at the moment, to be honest with you. I don't think they do. They have a lot of similar type forwards, nippy kind of forwards. Now, I do think he's a little different because obviously he has a bit of speed, but he does really seem to have the eye for the post and has something. He just...
But crucially, not for the net.
No, yeah.
As in the way he was playing for Ballygunner, and I think he has it in him. He definitely has. And Liam Cahill is a man who, with his Tipperary underage days, goes for goal.
Yeah,
if
mad
he
for
can
goal.
coach that man, Desi Hutchinson, to turn and go at goal constantly, I think they've got a possible massive star.
Yeah, possibly. It was funny chatting to your brother actually before Christmas because I kind of asked him. He marked Desi in the Munster final. And I said, "Do you think he's the sort of lad to that could make a big breakthrough at Waterford?" And he cast some shadow on him. To be honest with you, he cast some doubt about it. Just in the sense that it is a massive step up. He's going from having never played senior club to last year he did to possibly playing senior county next year. It's a fair step up, and there's going to be a few fairly frustrating days ahead of him, I'd say, along the road.
They need a double threat in there. Like Tom Devine isn't going to be there again, but
he's a massive loss, because he's powerful and he is a big goal threat. He puts his head down and wants to go for goal.
But he's like he might score 1-1, 1-2 maybe, and not every day either.
Yeah.
Whereas they need someone who's going to be in there who's a threat for 1-3 every day. Do you know, like the guys I've just named,
Canning, and TJ Reid, these kind of boys.
Like they could go to absolute town on you. And I just think because Waterford don't really seem to have that. They've a load of guys who are really good runners who could get you 2 or 3 points, but don't necessarily present that goal threat. Like they need a couple of guys who are going to be able to solo in, create a 2-on-1, hand pass it in, someone knocks it into the net. And I don't know if they'll have that. I presume Gleeson will go back to the forwards this year.
Jeez, I wouldn't take that for granted.
Would you not?
No, definitely
But
not.
again, I think the problem is they don't have enough threats up there, so they're going to have to put him up there because he's 6'2" or 3", whatever he is, and he's got scale and he's got power and speed.
What way would you take it though? Would you play Austin Gleeson midfield or centre back, would say, and have him consistently in games the whole time and delivering good performances in every game, or consistent performances at least, or would you have him a half forward in this Roman kind of role and you're not sure what you're going to get in a given game? Like the way they build their game, whatever a game plan is, and the way they build lads like that into it is going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah, I think sometimes you'd love the idea of wouldn't he work great in full forward, but then in practice I don't know if it works that well. I think somewhere in the half forward line. I don't know about the idea of a roaming from centre forward, because I think a lot of players get lost when they're doing that and they end up getting choked out in traffic. Maybe even just wing forward. Lord Puckouts down on top of him, because there's no substitute for winning primary possession.
No, and he's a great paw on him. The full forward thing I don't think it'd work. I think you have to be unbelievably knacky inside. You have to be so knacky. He's not natural. He's not natural. That's why we talked about Cottle McShane with Tyrone, the footballers. It's funny that you can convert a lad into that, because that rarely happens in any code, hurling or football. I think most of the lads that go in playing the inside line and are natural poachers and have those instincts, they have them developed over a long time.
Still in all, I wouldn't rule out the possibility of Desi Hutchinson and Austin Gleeson side by side inside, because you can hit long on top of, you can hit it anyway into Austin really if he's on form. And then Desi Hutchinson has the speed beside him. I don't know, if you got enough ball, if you were winning enough ball back down the field and you had those two guys sharp inside, I don't know, it'd be worth trying. It may not work, but it's worth trying.
I tell you what, it definitely, I'd be not saying definitely won't work, but it's very unlikely to work if they're playing a sweeper at the other end.
Yeah.
So like, and every time we would have seen Austin Gleeson inside or anything like that, and even in the half hour line we would have seen him they would have been against an extra defender, always against an extra defender. So I don't expect to see that.
But like most teams now, well, a lot of teams now are playing 2 lads in the square and everyone else is dragged out the field. So maybe you're kind of, it's sweeper light type thing, or else it's sweeper heavy because everyone's going back. So maybe they can find a balance.
How occupied is that? If you're giving the other team the chance to drop a man back, how occupied is that player going? Like, are you going to try and make sure you're always pulling that player out, or are you just going to let them sit there? If you're letting them sit there and it's 3-on-2, any two are going to find it hard.
Liam Cahill's going to have to take the senior into county like a duck to water, because I think he's obviously been unbelievably successful underage with Tipperary, winning minor All-Ireland, winning under 21 All-Ireland, then the grade changed to under 20 and he also won that, scoring bagfuls of goals along the way. But I think there's definitely a discernible difference between managing kids, which even at under 21 level, I think there still are certainly kid mindsets in a lot of cases, not all, now he's managing adults who will question what you're doing, who are used to a professional standard and getting to an All-Ireland final, who do know what it takes to get within 20 minutes of winning an All-Ireland.
Yeah.
So if what he is doing isn't up to the level of what seasoned adults are expecting, that will cause an issue pretty quickly.
No, it will cause a big issue. I think he's, funnily enough, I would have said different before. In a way, he's coming in a nice position because they can't. I don't know. Can they get much worse? They're in an awful position, and there is a big backlash in the county. Austin Gleeson saying about what people will be saying to them on the street, and nobody really had a good word to say about Waterford. I'm sure the bit is between their teeth that they're just sick of that now at this stage, and I think. If Liam Cahill is selling them something, a professional setup where they're going to work really hard and is selling them the possibility of success if they all really buy into it, I think there's a fair chance that they will buy into it because they must be fed up of like totally they're totally underachieving at the moment. They're not doing anything. They haven't done anything the last 2 years.
Do you ever hear people talk about that the style of hurling that they did under Derek for 5 years, where it felt very defined roles, etc., that there was almost like they're indoctrinated in that style, which is very strong sort of connotations to that, but that I'm not necessarily buying into. But I'm just saying it's something that I keep hearing about, that they're so kind of melded into this style of hurling that they're not being individual enough. They're not playing off the cuff enough. And I'm not talking about going back to the Maverick generation of Dan Shanahan, Owen Kelly,
Ken McGrath,
all these kind of things. But that they're so typecast into certain roles that they're not able to think for themselves on the field anymore. Now, do you think that number one, is that an unfair comment on Derek's tenure when he did very, very well in a lot of senses, win the league, get into an All-Ireland final? And number two, can these players kind of break free of that mould?
I don't think it's totally unfair. If you've played a certain way for 5 years, and just say as a defender, if you've always had someone in front of you and you're going to not having someone in front of you, it's a completely different game. It's when you have someone in front of you, I'm marking you and I can go ball headed for the ball and I know that Tadhg de Búrca is there.
Because you know that, like, let's say you spill the ball, like you go 100% to get out in front of your man, you don't have to worry to get nudged away because I'm going to get in behind you and get the break.
Exactly, yeah. Or
so
if it just even get a touch to it and get it out to someone.
So you'll have it at the front and I'll have it at the back.
Yeah.
You're covered either way.
And also, like, we'll just say, like, Shane Bennett and Maurice Shannon, their primary role, obviously work rate is required all over the field, but their primary role was to keep the ball in the forward line. That was their primary role, to work unbelievably hard going across here and keep the ball in. Whereas, like, if you're talking about Dessie Hutchinson, his role could be completely different to that. Completely different. He might only be moving a small bit, and if the ball coming in is good in that. So it's completely different. Just to mention Tadhg de Búrca as well there. He obviously did his cruciate in club action as well. So, like, he'll probably do well see the summer as well. So there's a big player that you're talking about being without. Again, whenever he comes back, he's going to, you'd imagine, have to adapt to a different role, but he's going to be marking a man the majority of the time as well. So that's going to be different for him. But I do buy into that. If I played cornerback for 5 years in a sweeper system, my game would be completely different minus the sweeper system.
Will the year under Pádraig Fanning, where they definitely played a bit different, do you think that will have even helped kind of, I don't know, lay the groundwork for Liam Cahill in the sense that
accelerated a bit more.
Yeah, because the players didn't necessarily play the same system in 2019.
Yeah, it could help accelerate that a bit more. Yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting. Again, we talk about Leinster and like that top three, like Munster, that top three is like someone big is going to miss out.
Yeah.
But Waterford have been miles off it the last 2 years.
Come here, just one other thing actually, just while we're talking about the legacy of past regimes, there was always this talk of like and feeling of a band of brothers. Whereas Liam Cahill, I think, kind of has more of a reputation of a straight talker. So rather than, it may be more stick than carrot.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. The players, and sometimes a change is as good as a rest. So,
yeah, no, like fairness, chatting to Jake Morris at a recent kind of sponsorship gig there, and he was saying how Liam was like a father figure to them.
Yeah.
And the first Munster game is against Tipperary, which is kind of hilarious in a sense because he brought so many of those players through. But while he's a straight talker in that, I'm sure there's that other kind of side to him as well. It might just be a bit more kind of forceful maybe than previous regimes.
Will they get more out of Patrick Kerr and Jake Dillon? Like Jack Prendergast came in last year, had a bit of quality about him. Colin Dunford, will he get back to his form? Like, there are players there that do look like they have an awful lot of potential. But my reason for not thinking Waterford will make a massive impact deep into Championship or get out of Munster is I don't think they're the right balance of size, speed, strength and class.
I don't think they have the score at the moment, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I don't think they have the score. You're going to need to be scoring 120, 121 to be winning these big games more. You're going to have to be hitting the net. You're going to have to be hitting the net. Just say to get to an All-Ireland semi-final and be really competitive over your 4 Munster games and any other games, you're going to have to be hitting the net 8 or 9 times. Can I see them hitting the net 8 or 9 times? Not really.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
And their league group is Galway, Westmeath, Cork, Tip, Limerick and themselves. So
That's
like,
tasty.
It's tasty enough. It's basically Munster light.
Munster and Galway must meet from into
yeah. So like, I think Waterford going on the last season and a half, they'd probably be like in a small bit of bother against Westmeath. They'd still expect to win the game, but like they've been playing so poorly, you'd expect they'd have trouble. But I think they'll expect to come through that. But other than that, they're probably going to be under pressure for positive results, unless Liam is able to have a very quick impact.
I'd say that's what he'll be hoping for. I think they're going to need to pick up a couple of big results. I think they're going to have to.
Well, the league did nothing for them last year getting to the final, and even the impact of losing so decisively to Limerick possibly even knocked them back a bit.
I think coming 3, 4 or 5 for them with a defeat over Westmeath and with a win over one of those other counties will be big for them.
And no hammerings.
Yeah, no hammerings. Yeah, and it can't be like, what did they score? They scored 10 points against someone in the Munster Championship last year.
Yeah, it was at Limerick.
10 points at home.
Yeah.
Like, and we talked before about hopefully that for them at Walsh Park becoming a bit of a fortress. It's been an absolute shell for them. It's been a disaster. The results in Walsh Park, beaten by Clare obviously by a point in the first match. That game against Limerick, look, those 2 championship matches were an absolute disaster for them. Like, they're going to have to try and make that a bit of a fortress. It had been in some of the league games, but their 2 championship games were atrocious. Yeah, but as I said, the starting point is very, very, like, the starting block is very, very low down. So he'd be hoping to just, I suppose, hit the ground running straight away from the start, get lads. I think lads, but it sounds of things, lads seem to be buying into it. I think it'll be more agricultural in a good type of way.
Yeah. Let us know what you think, how Watford will go this year, what they need. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and leave any comments below the video.